It's with great pleasure that I welcome back Dr. Sean Patel, who's the CEO and founder of Prep Expert, the title sponsor of the College Admissions Process podcast. Sean, you have a special message for the listeners?
Hey, John, I just wanted to mention for all the parents and students who are listening to this great podcast, we have a really special offer only for listeners of the College Admissions Process podcast for Prep Expert. So if your student is going to be taking an online SAT, ACT, PSAT course anytime soon, or is looking for one-on-one tutoring with top 1% tutors, head over to prepexpert.com. We offer live online courses for every college admissions exam. On top of that, we have the best score guarantees, best curriculum, and best instructors in the test prep industry. And just for listeners of the College Admissions Process podcast, you can get 20% off any online SAT or PSAT or ACT course, as well as one-on-one tutoring. So you can get 20% off. Just make sure you use the promo code College Talk. That's one word, College Talk, and you'll get 20% off just for listeners of the College Admissions Process podcast. And I hope you guys can use that to your advantage, save a bunch of money at prepexpert.com.
Thank you so much, Sean. And to everyone out there, once again, that promo code is College Talk. That's one word, College Talk. Thank you all, and best wishes. Welcome to The Cap, where we are here to speak with college reps and other professionals in the field of college admissions to help answer all your questions and guide you through every step of the process. So if you're serious about college admissions, you've come to the right place. Are you ready? Let's talk about it. And now, here's your host, Dr. John Durante. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome back Bruce Bunnick, who's the Director of Admissions at Lehigh University. Bruce, thank you so much for coming back. How are you?
I'm well, John. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, it's much appreciated on my end as well. So let's get right to it, Bruce. For listeners who may not be familiar, can you start by giving us an overview of Lehigh University and what makes it stand out among private universities, especially for students interested in STEM, business, and the arts and sciences?
Certainly. Lehigh is a medium-sized private Research One university. In fact, we just received R1 status through the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching recently. So we are in that level at this point. But an interesting characteristic of Lehigh is that we do live the life of an R1, a Research One institution, but we have the heart and soul of a moderately sized liberal arts college. This is the type of an institution where faculty members are active scholars, but they're very, very engaged teachers to the undergraduate students. We have approximately 6,000 undergraduate students and about 1,700 graduate level students. And so the emphasis here is that we teach. Our faculty members are also they are also teachers in the classroom. So that relationship that undergraduates will have with faculty is closely knit and something that we believe in. The other feature that I would discuss relative to your question about the STEM disciplines and business and arts and sciences is that we have 4 colleges at Lehigh: arts and sciences, business, engineering and applied sciences, and the newest is the College of Health. We take a very integrated and interdisciplinary approach to educating students. So majoring in one program offered in one of our colleges, but minoring in something that might be considered at the far opposite end of the academic spectrum is absolutely possible. It's not required at Lehigh, but it is common and it is possible. The curriculum allows students to really take advantage of the flexibility that we provide in our curriculum.
Well, I think, Bruce, that the curriculum is very much part of your mission, your philosophy, and your values in terms of wanting students to understand that you are an institution that really prioritizes interdisciplinary studies. So if students, and I know that we're going to get to the application review later on, but Bruce, how important is it for students to demonstrate their understanding of your mission, philosophy, values, and their application? I mean, is that something that's going to help them stand out in an overall application?
I think it can in under certain circumstances. For example, we offer multiple opportunities as an admissions office to have prospective students and their families, regardless of where they reside, either in the United States or abroad, to engage with us. And they could be in-person events, they could be virtual events. And those virtual events are hosted by admissions officers. They're hosted by staff members from across our offices on the campus, to faculty members who discuss the programs they offer. So there are multiple opportunities for students to really engage in a deliberate and purposeful investigation of what we have to provide. And so we're trying to get them to understand what we're all about, why they might be able to see themselves in our environment.
Well, that's great. And Lehigh, of course, is known for its emphasis on hands-on learning, innovation, and community engagement. Bruce, how do students experience that mission day to day, both academically and socially? And how can applicants reflect an authentic understanding of those values in their overall application?
I believe that the students that we attract into our applicant pool are those who are purposeful and deliberate in their academic pursuits. I think that they're very engaging students. They enjoy learning for the sake of learning. They do like to problem solve from different angles and work across teams, etc. But they're also very social individuals, and that's sometimes a hard combination to pull together in an applicant pool. There is an unwritten expectation on our campus that we want students to be engaged in the classroom, in the academic piece, in the pedagogy, and in what we do to educate students. But we also place a high value on their engagement outside of the classroom. And that engagement could come in the form of leadership or service through our Office of Community Service. We have over 200 student-led clubs and organizations on this campus. We have over 40 intramural and recreational sports. We host 27 varsity Division I varsity rosters on our campus. So there are these many opportunities for students to engage both in the academic side of our campus, but also when they can put the books down and enjoy being individuals, to get to know people, possibly to involve themselves in research or study abroad, or you name it. I mean, we do place a high expectation on our students, and I feel that we're fortunate in the sense that the students respond. They respond in kind. They might in high school not be an individual that was outgoing or super involved, but I feel like the energy and the spirit, the vibe, if you will, of our campus allows them to explore those opportunities and really to embrace what might be, kind of something that's comfortable to them, or might be something that's completely different. They discover their own strengths in a multitude of ways before they graduate.
Well, that's definitely what college should be part of in terms of trying to discover who you are or to continue to discover who you are. And I love the emphasis not only on the academics, which is so important, but also the social aspect. Now, Bruce, can you walk us through Lehigh's holistic admissions process? How do you balance academic achievement, extracurricular involvement, personal qualities, and what some might call this thing we call demonstrated understanding of Lehigh when reviewing those applications?
Yeah, that's a great question. It doesn't always have a precise answer. Above all else, the academic piece is very important in our holistic review, because we want to make sure that the student's preparation in high school gives us confidence that they are prepared for what lies ahead in the classroom. And it doesn't matter which college or perhaps which program or which major, et cetera. We want to make sure that they are ready for an environment that will test them and challenge them and keep them on their academic and intellectual toes all the time. But on the other side of things, we're also looking at those non-cognitive variables, those things you would describe as leadership and extracurricular activities. We want to know if they've conducted a meaningful search of us. Why we do ask a very specific question of why are you interested in us and what led you to investigate us. And so we do value those responses, and we hope that students, be it online or through virtual programs or on-campus presentations and visitation events, that investigation they conducted helps them to understand what we're all about. It works in a lot of instances. It might not work in other cases. They might be very busy individuals. I know today that students are very, very busy outside of the classroom. I recognize and acknowledge the role that even social media plays. And we tell people that we'd like to think in the admissions office that we have a pretty active and vibrant TikTok account. So take a look at us, and it gives us a chance to show how, the humanistic side of the work we do, and the institution that we represent, the kinds of students that we hope to attract to our applicant pool, and so on.
Well, I think that's a great point in terms of talking about social media, because nowadays it's so easy to obviously research the schools based on your website, because that's the most up-to-date information that you're going to find on a college, because it's the college or university's responsibility to put out the most up-to-date responsibility. But if you want to get, a taste of the school culture, especially if you have accounts that are official accounts of the college or university, definitely use social media. And I also love how you pointed out, in fact, that yes, academics is still the number one thing, but you also want to see the type of community member that the students are going to be. So equally as important to the transcript and the academics are all of the other things that students may or may not be able to offer on and off your campus. So
And I'd also want to
go ahead, please.
I'd also, yeah, like just quickly mention that the value of the personal essay. That personal essay provides a window into that student's and their world. They talk about something that might be topic of choice, or an event that led them to celebrate some achievement or accomplishment. There's a variety of different prompts, but those written responses are also very important because it gives voice to an otherwise voiceless application. And I will tell you that I will not necessarily remember, and I don't say this to push people away or to offend, but I will remember a student because of their essay. I will remember a student because of what they wrote about themselves, that perspective, that kind of that little piece that they wanted to add to their application. And that, to me, in the holistic review process, I think we do place value on the essay that sometimes goes overlooked. That people think, well, you get thousands of them and you just must kind of skim over them. We really don't. And lastly, the letters of recommendation are equally important in the holistic review process, because they talk about the student's character, their development, their propensity for success in a competitive college environment, the accomplishments they've achieved. So it comes together in that holistic review process. But there's not a precise formula that says, X plus Y plus Z equals admit. It's not as simple as that. The good part is that this is still a decidedly humanistic process, and that there are people reading those applications. We don't have an algorithm that determines what is the best fit, what you based on answers or grades or those kinds of things. That is still very humanistic.
Well, I appreciate you mentioning the personal statement, because I would imagine in the admissions office reviewing a transcript, it probably takes you a few minutes to look at the transcript and see whether or not the student challenged themselves over 4 years based on the context of what their high school has to offer, the ramps that they built, how they performed. That's kind of simple to see in a transcript. But that personal statement, right, where there's a story attached to it, where you really get a sense of the student's personality, that's probably the best part of it. And I guess the question I have is, when two applicants appear really strong and really similar in terms of the academic portion, have there been times when the personal statement, will give someone a tipping point over someone else?
I think in the review process, that can happen, that a particular applicant at the same high school might have a slight edge over another applicant from the same high school. But at the end of the day, I feel as if when we review in committee and when we look at everyone in a school group, where if there are more people around the table at that point, and so that edge might be might or might not work out in the final decision-making process.
Right, but it's just the importance of putting your full effort in the personal statement, students, and also those very important supplemental essays. Now, when evaluating the transcript, how does your team assess the rigor of a student's coursework? In other words, honors, AP, IB, or dual enrollment, all of the above, especially when schools vary so widely in what they offer? And how do you make sure that fairness and context are built into your overall review?
Yeah, I think that's a good point to bring up of fairness. And I think that selective, very selective college admissions, um, might teeter on that definition because it is so competitive that at the end of the day, we have more applicants who are qualified than seats that are available in the class. And so that's where it becomes more challenging for us as a staff. And I think I probably could speak at for other institutions in a similar fashion. We don't compare students from one high school to another, to a neighboring high school, and so on and so on. When we look at a transcript and its quality and the strength of the curriculum over 4 years, we are looking specifically within a school group as opposed to a region or maybe a county or an area of the country or the world. So if we have multiple applications from a single high school, then certainly we're going to compare one student versus another. We'll even look even more deeper. How many of those students are applying to engineering or versus business or versus health or arts and sciences? And so we do have these little factors that we work into our equation, but never do we compare one school versus another. We don't also have some kind of mythical pecking order that these schools are considered higher quality and these are middle quality and so on. No, no, no. We're looking at the applicant within the context of their high school and that alone. We also have homeschool students, which presents a completely different dynamic to the process. So there's been a slight increase in homeschool students, and so that changes our calculus to some extent as well.
Well, we appreciate that. And we're going to come back to the homeschool students in just a moment. But I really appreciate the point that you made that, again, you evaluate each student based on the context of their high school. However, you're not comparing ABC High School to XYZ High School, which I think is so important for students to hear. Now, I speak to students sometimes who feel that their high school may have less than that high school down the road. And there's always a high school down the road, right, that schools compare each other to. So for that student and their family, what advice would you give to the student from a school with, I'll call it, limited advanced offerings who worry that they may be at a disadvantage? What would you say to that family?
I think it's a fair question, but I feel that if a student in their own individual high school is taking advantage of what that school offers and what is considered most rigorous or challenging or more rigorous, et cetera, then that alone, I wouldn't worry about the comparing high school ABC against high school XYZ. There could be opportunities for students to take dual enrollment, although I do get somewhat, I don't want to say reluctant, but I'm concerned that if a student is attending a high school where they say, we don't offer a lot of advanced placement or honors courses, our most demanding curriculum is assessed by the guidance counselor in their school form, their Common App school form, and they're going to give me the best recommendation based on the classes that I have. It might only be one or two APs over 4 years, but this is the best curriculum I have to provide. I wouldn't want someone to feel compelled to contact a local 2-year college or local 4-year college and look for immediate answers to those questions. I think if a student were to get involved in dual enrollment classes, it ought to be for their own reasons. I've exhausted the math curriculum in my high school, and I want to take an upper level class in calculus, or I want to take a international relations course because I'm really interested in this material, and I have the opportunity. I wouldn't do it to pad the resume, strictly to pad the resume, the academic resume, that is. I would do it because there is a true desire to take those classes, and it's just going to be an add-on to my overall academic portfolio.
Well, I think that's such a great point to exhaust all of the resources that are available at your high school students, whatever it is, right? And so, to your point, Bruce, if you have exhausted all of the resources and you want more, then consider the dual enrollment option. An example that just happens to come to mind, the student that makes it to calculus, whatever level of calculus in their high school, but they want even more, so they go and take a multivariable calculus dual enrollment course or something like that, right? That might be an extreme example, but there are a lot of students that do that. But I appreciate your point. Don't do it just to pad the resume. Do it to show, your why, that you're really into it, you want more. And it really also points to the type of person that you are, the type of student that you are. Now, Bruce, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, but the letters of recommendation obviously can be a real source of stress for so many students. From your perspective, what makes a recommendation truly stand out to your team, and how should students decide who to ask? And could you share an example of one that really captured a student's strength in a really memorable way?
Yeah. So I'll kind of back into an answer. I think it's a great question, but your guidance counselor, a student is limited to that. We require one from a guidance or college counselor, and so that is, I would recommend that whatever steps a guidance office offers, if you attend a large, maybe public high school where the counseling staff has a significant caseload and you need to get to know that person, whatever opportunities they offer in the second half of the junior year, maybe the first part of the junior year, to get to know your guidance counselor a little bit better. Wonderful. That way they can complete an assessment of your accomplishments and your aspirations in a way that is thoughtful and meaningful. I think when it comes to teachers, I think this advice is going to vary by institution. I will say, with my Lehigh hat on, that our philosophy is go to a teacher who can write an effective letter of recommendation on your behalf. If you want to study engineering or STEM, but you feel like your history teacher really knows you well, your English teacher can write a thoughtful, thorough letter of recommendation on your behalf. In our world, that's completely fine. They might be the best person to write that letter of recommendation, or you could have a calculus teacher who uses wonderful prose and can really describe you in a way that suggests that you've made significant contributions to the class. You've grasped the material that's been covered. Maybe in some instances, you're the student in the class who helps others who might be struggling, or you could recognize people when they might be struggling, and you're the one who sort of lifts up the class, etc. Or you could be, this is just a quiet, thoughtful learner. This is a student who completes all their assignments on time, and they need very little help, but I feel like they are, clearly grasping the material. As far as a memorable, I don't have one off the top of my head, but I do like the fact that teachers, especially the teachers, can talk about the student from the academic perspective, and then also if there are words or things that they can add to that recommendation. I would say, this is the type of student you're getting, because this person has been in my class for maybe over the last 2 years. They've been in a few of my classes, and it was an absolute pleasure to teach them. And I feel like this person will be successful wherever they go. But I couldn't speak highly enough about their character, their capacity for success in the next level. And I look forward one day to seeing, the impact they have in our world. Those kinds of letters are meaningful.
Yeah, that definitely sounds meaningful. And I love the example that you gave where a teacher spoke of a student who perhaps was uplifting. They always, recognize if there's someone that needs help in class, or little stories like that that are not easily found on a transcript or even an activity sheet. So students, the lesson here is it's very important to ask the teacher that really knows you, that you really have a great relationship with. And if there's something that did happen, an initiative that you started, don't be bashful to ask them, hey, could you write about that? Because without knowing, many times what a teacher may do is they might write about the fact that you're a great English student, and that you're in the journalism club because they happen to be the advisor. Well, all of that information and more is available already on the transcript and the activity sheet. So it's kind of a missed opportunity if they're not,
Yeah.
expanding upon who you are as a community member.
Yeah, and we always use in our office, we've kind of recited the French club president scenario. And it's one thing to say that I've been involved in the French club for 4 years, and rose up to become the president of the French club, which is fine. It sounds like it's just, you had a leadership role in the club. But if there was a letter of recommendation behind that to say, let me tell you what this person did as the president of the French club. If they led an effort to raise $25,000 that allowed the French club to travel to Paris, and they spearheaded this initiative. Nobody else did. This person took on the weight of this, and the hole that they're leaving behind when they leave us and they graduate from us is going to be felt immediately. They're the kind of words that a teacher might say, here's my classroom perspective, here's my personal perspective. And it could be. And then that's maybe a wild example of the French club president. But there are instances where teachers will write about students in that sense.
And it's great to see what the teacher wrote really expands upon what the student wrote. And it brings me to the activity sheet. You just prompted a question in my mind because I know that there's very limited characters for each activity. And I believe it's still 10 activities on the Common App. Have you ever seen a student using that small space to really capture, better than most in terms of what it is that they did in whatever activity it was? Because again, I believe the characters are only 150. That's 150 characters, not words.
Mhm.
So any examples that you could share from the activity sheet that kind of stood out as, hey, this was really meaningful and a great use of space?
Yeah, a great question to ask about that. I don't think, unfortunately, because of the character limitation, that there is a way to fully capture in that section of the application what they might have done, the contributions they've made, the leadership that they've displayed, et cetera. There have been, I've seen more students in the additional information section where they will type in web links or YouTube links, and look at what I've done here, or this is a link to my portfolio. And so I wouldn't want students to feel like, well, now I've got to go out and get a YouTube page, and I've got to do this, or I've got to do social media accounts, et cetera. But I feel like almost because there's limitation in the extracurricular space, students are more, they're using the additional information section more wisely and maybe including web links or URLs where this is something I've accomplished, or this is a URL to the abstract that I wrote because I did research and this is meaningful to me. So I feel like students are finding ways around it, which is good, and that shows that that they are putting together a very deliberate extracurricular profile.
Well, I think that's a great example because, again, to your point, the activity sheet has such limited characters, but there is this thing called the additional section space where students can elaborate on something that happened.
Yes.
Many times it's something very serious, maybe tragic, maybe there was a divorce in the family,
Yeah.
whatever. But you could also use the additional space, as Bruce pointed out, to talk about other things. So students, look at your overall application. The transcript, the activity sheet, letters of recommendation, personal statements, supplementals. If there's something more that you want to share to make your overall application more complete, and Bruce shared some great examples, perhaps you have a website, a YouTube channel, whatever it is, use the additional space to share it, right, Bruce? I mean, what else
Yeah.
do you want to add to that? Anything else?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I wouldn't say that decisions rise or fall on the more websites or URLs. No, but I feel like if you're trying to add some structure around those extracurricular activities, and you might focus on one particular, or you feel like I have significant accomplishments, but this will show you what my accomplishments might have been. There were, years and years ago, there was always there were students who would send us CDs, better known as compact discs. Say, this is my cello performance, or this is my violin performance, or this is my horn performance, etc. And we would keep a library of students' musical works, and it was nice because sometimes it was background noise to actually read applications to, and you almost felt like, okay, this is something that's inspiring to me as a reader. So the compact discs are now kind of retro, but I think they replaced with shared Google Drives or URLs or YouTube links. Yeah.
Hey, podcast friends, if you've been enjoying the College Admissions Process podcast, I'm excited to share my new book, Straight from the Admissions Office, Insider Strategies for College Applications. It's packed with insights and tips from over 250 podcast episodes with admissions professionals designed to make the college process less overwhelming. Whether you're a student, parent, or college counselor, it's a valuable resource for navigating the admissions process. By grabbing a copy, you're also helping to support the podcast. The links are in the show notes. Thank you, and best wishes to all with the college admissions process.
Absolutely. And another thing that's very important to so many students and their families is this thing that we call standardized test. Now,
Yeah.
Lehigh remains test optional. But Bruce, how should students decide whether or not to submit standardized test scores? And roughly what percentage of your most recent incoming class applied without them?
Sure. So I'll reverse that. And we've been roughly 50% of our applicant pool are giving us standardized tests with instructions to use standardized testing in our evaluation of their application for admission. So that is a pointed question on our supplement. Do you wish to submit? And if so, send us the official score report. But the other 50% who do not submit standardized testing, since we are a test optional institution, we're not penalizing them in some way, shape, or form because they don't. Or even in the example of, I go to a school where you would think that a high percentage of the students sit for the SATs or the ACTs, but I'm the lone student from that high school that didn't submit. I might have the scores, but I chose not to submit. We don't have the time to wonder, do they have scores? Why didn't they submit? What was the reason why? And then somehow penalize them. We just don't have the time to do that. I feel like when students register for either the SAT or the ACT, my recommendation is to consider. This is not law of the land, but take the exams, don't report them to institutions when you first take them. Get your scores back, maybe one or two administrations of either. And then you might want to look at your grades. Don't worry about the ranges, the 25th to 75th percent range necessarily, but look at your grades. And if though you feel that based on my transcript and my performance over 3 years of high school and where I'm falling, percentile wise against, the nation, I feel like this is a good representation of my performance, and I'm going to submit those test scores. But in other words, I almost feel like take them, hold them close to your vest, and then decide. These are all the schools I'm applying to. They're all test optional. I'll send them here. I won't send them there. I'll send them here. I mean, there is a return. There's a number of institutions that are household name institutions that are returning to requiring SAT or ACT submission. We've decided, again, to remain test optional for the foreseeable future. And for someone who's been in this profession for 35 years, I feel like it is it's a fresh breath of air because you're so used to being, kind of anchored to a number in the past. Now I feel like, well, okay, this is a student who gives us great transcript, great leadership, great recommendations, a wonderful essay, etc. And they're just as strong as their counterparts who might give us the standardized test results. So there's not a one-size-fits-all answer there. But if you take them, you hold them, and then you decide that these are the schools I'm going to submit, fine. One recommendation I would say though to students, honestly, the Common application allows you to self-report your scores on the application itself. And it's only one application. It's Common App, one time. And you share it with a multitude of institutions. If you self-report your scores, but then you say, no, I don't want those scores used in my evaluation, honestly, we're human. Once you see the scores, you can't unsee them. Now, in the write-up and in the comments we write, et cetera, we will say that the student chose not to use standardized test results, et cetera. Is that a disadvantage or an advantage? Not necessarily, but I feel like there have been, there's a number of students who say no, but then self-report. And once you see them, you can't unsee them, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense, and that's great insight and a great tip for the students and families out there. And Bruce, you've also mentioned in the past that test optional policies can sometimes distort how applicants interpret score ranges. How should students read those mid 50% ranges and think strategically about testing without letting it dominate their college search or self-worth?
Right, right. First, I would say that in this test optional environment, my opinion, the middle 50%, 25th, the 75th percentile will be populated with students who have, on average, higher SAT scores or ACT composite scores. That is just natural because the students who might have those high scores are going to submit and say yes. So that will be the basis of the range of scores. I would say that there's nothing wrong with a student looking at their transcript, looking at their achievements and their extracurriculars, et cetera, and saying, I might not fit in that range, but I feel like I've got so much more to offer in a variety of other areas. And so I choose not to submit standardized test results. I hesitate to say that, I should back up. I would say to a student, don't necessarily look at the range and say, if I'm not in that range, I'm not considered. No, that's not always the case. There are students who fall in that range, candidly, that might not be a good fit for Lehigh. We might say, okay, but maybe a wait list. It's just, where you kind of fell short was that you didn't really have the interest. You didn't really do a thoughtful investigation. It just seems like your aspirations are somewhere else, even though you might be in the top 5% of our applicant pool. So I wouldn't say there's a magic number even for average ACT or SAT. There's a range, but it is relative. I don't mean to sound, flippant about it, but it is relative.
Bruce, how does Lehigh support students with unique learning needs, such as those who had an IEP or a 504 plan while in high school, again, to ensure that they're set up for success both academically and personally once they're on the Lehigh campus?
Sure. I think with IEPs or 504s, et cetera, I think that's something that these days, we're not seeing as many of them in the process. There was a time where if a student had an IEP or anything else that helped us understand a learning difference, they would include it in their application. Today, I feel like students are alluding to a diagnosis of a learning difference, maybe in their youth or maybe recently, that treatment and medication in some instances have helped them to turn a corner with their grades, et cetera, et cetera. As far as what we do, though, at Lehigh, we do have an Office of Disability Support. And that office will work with students individually. You do have to meet Lehigh's definition of having, needing support. So we would, that office would do an analysis and determine that, is it something that we might need assistance in the classroom? Is it note takers? Is it additional study hours? Is it et cetera, et cetera? So we provide the full gamut of options and opportunities to help students once they're here. If a student might have, again, an IEP, et cetera, and they don't qualify, they can still take advantage of all of our academic support services. We have a writing center on campus where you can just give a draft of an essay before you turn it in to the faculty and evaluate it, give me some feedback. Or we have a math center on campus. I'm struggling in calculus. I need a tutor. We have tutorial support. We have study groups. So we have all those features. I think, though, honestly, John, it's a matter of one step forward. Sometimes students might arrive on a college campus and say, I never realized that I actually have a learning difference. And I have to get this looked at. I have to get this, taken care of, because I know I can grasp this material, but it's not working out for me in the classroom or in tests, et cetera. And so they might have that experience once they get here. But I find that students are alluding to it in their writing samples. They might say, additional information. Want to let you know that I was diagnosed with dyslexia as a young age. I've worked around it and I've overcome. I've managed it, and my grades are fine. But no, we'll provide any and all resources for students.
Well, we appreciate that. And students, obviously, if you had a 504, an IEP, or anything else, and you need those extra services, definitely reach out to the Office of Accessibility. Also, Bruce, you mentioned earlier, I'm sorry, did you want to say something?
No, I was just going to say that in the investigation of an institution, reach out to a similar office as well. And maybe the student should do it. I understand the role parents play in this process, and I understand that it's an investment for the family. I recognize that as a parent myself. But an admissions office is not the one-stop shop. You can come to a campus and visit an admissions office. Then you might say, I want to talk to somebody in that academic department or in that office or in that leadership component of the institution. Nothing should stop you. Nothing should stop you from getting in touch with those people. They will give you very candid, very honest responses as well to say, we work with students every day. We want to tell you, we're excited to tell you what we do and how, our students are, they retain, they graduate, they do well, et cetera. So don't feel as if everything is kind of housed in the admissions office. Yeah.
Well, that's great advice. Definitely reach out to the Office of Accessibility or the admissions office if you have an admissions question. Now, you mentioned it earlier in terms of students who are homeschooled, and we've seen a growing number of homeschooled applicants nationwide. Bruce, what should homeschool students focus on in their applications to stand out? And how does your review process differ, if at all, from that of students from traditional high schools to homeschool students?
There's not a difference in the approach or in the review of the homeschool student versus, a student who is enrolled in a traditional high school setting. The most visible difference is that we're not, the transcript is on some state, maybe a recognized state organization that says that they will complete all of the required courses in order to earn a high school diploma. So we have to be able to verify that the state that they graduate within which they are attending or they're being homeschooled will recognize that diploma, that homeschool certificate, if you will. We have some other students who might say, I'm going to do this. I've got state recognized, et cetera. I'm also going to take my GED just to have it. I just want to have it. I want to see how, I can perform against the GED. But as far as like the extracurriculars and the recommendations, now granted, the recommendations might be a little bit different. They're typically coming from the parent, and they might supplement. Right now, I would say on recommendation letters, be a little cautious with supplementing. I mean, most institutions will require one counselor, one teacher, maybe two teachers. Definitely check into it. Make sure you're satisfying those requirements. But a homeschool student might say, my teacher is my counselor. So it's one, but I'm going to send you a letter of recommendation from an employer. I am actually eligible to participate in my local high school's varsity athletics. I want to send a coach who teaches classes and I interact with a lot. Or it could be a civic leader locally. Let me submit a letter that this person can tell you about my character, about my way, myself, et cetera, that is meaningful. So we might see some differences, some differences there, but otherwise there's no real measurable differences.
Well, we appreciate the insights. And of course, Bruce, you've worked with thousands of students and families over your career. What's one question or a topic you wish more people would bring up during their interactions with you or one of your team members?
It's hard. We don't have a crystal ball. We can't see into the future, though we would like to. But I really like to ask students, what is it that you're seeking in an institution? What are the most important factors? If they can just be two or three really, really important factors that have led to your list, your list of institutions to apply to. Where was the commonality? Were you deliberately shooting high? And if you were, where was the middle of your list and your kind of your target schools, et cetera? What motivated you to put that list together? And is there commonality across the institutions as far as academics and size and location and opportunities? There is a right institution out there for everyone who seeks it, and there's thousands of them in the United States alone. I'd like to get in the mind of what would compel a student to say, yes, I'm going to apply. Why? Why is that? Some of it comes out, it comes out in the application, of course. But if I can have a face-to-face conversation with a student, I would say, what compelled you? What was it? What were the factors?
Yeah, that's great. And it really should be a reflective process. Students should really reflect on what they want academically, socially. In other words, what is it about Lehigh or any college or university that you're applying to that is making you want to apply? And if you do your research early and you can answer that question, filling out supplemental questions such as why Lehigh, it's only going to make the process hopefully easier for you if you did your research. So I think those are great points. And this has been a phenomenal conversation, Bruce, as I knew it would be. Before I get to the last question, I always like to ask, is there a topic we haven't touched upon today that you think is particularly important for families to understand as they approach the admissions process at Lehigh or college admissions in general?
I think it is equally important, but there's also the whole notion of financing of higher education that students. I feel like the admissions investigation. I won't say that it's simple. I won't say that it's easy because it can be complicated. It can involve great distances and ruling schools out versus schools that you didn't imagine that are all of a sudden in, etc. But I feel like the responsibility of a student and their family to look at the finances behind it. Let's ask questions of a financial aid office. Let's talk about, are there possibilities for merit scholarships? And there's never any guarantees, never any guarantees. But I feel as if the economy is sometimes uncertain, and we do field questions from parents, especially where they'll say, I don't want my child to graduate from college with crippling debt. That some level of debt helps to establish credit, and it puts things in perspective, and it makes my child feel like they've invested in their education, etc. But that financial aid piece, using the net price calculator, absolutely critical. People overlook that so much, but also reach out to a financial aid office and say, I saved a copy of my net price calculator. Can you look at it and tell me if this is right or wrong? We'll do that. Our financial aid office will Zoom with a student and say, okay, let me see what you got. Yep, that's correct. Okay, this is incorrect. You need to correct it. And then you go through the process again. And then it becomes like, I get it. I understand it. Because I feel like financial aid sometimes, I don't want to say that it's an afterthought, but I feel like sometimes it's not in the equation initially because they're so excited about the institution, the place, what it offers, the excitement, the students, et cetera. They get really excited. And if they're not looking at the costs as well, I feel like you could be selling yourself short.
Well, you could definitely be selling yourself short. And I love the advice to, number one, use the net price calculator. And I'm surprised how many parents are not even familiar with the net price calculator, which is something that every college and university is mandated to have. So basically, you could search net price calculator, Lehigh University, and put in the information as accurate as you can. And I love the additional piece of advice, Bruce, that you said, which is to reach out to the financial aid office, not only for any questions that you have, and they're there to answer your questions, but to reach out with the data from your net price calculator to see if you did it correctly. And perhaps, that'll prompt follow-up questions. I think that's phenomenal. So, Bruce, this has been a terrific conversation, as I knew it would be. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, it does bring us to that last question. And although you've given so many pieces of advice, what are your top 3 pieces of advice for students and families preparing for the college admissions process?
You will land as long as your list is meaningful and deliberate. So have confidence in the fact that you will land and everything will be okay. Secondly, I would say to the students in the senior year, yes, continue to work hard and kind of focus on your studies and focus on your extracurriculars, but don't hesitate to take some time to enjoy being a high school senior, because when you go off to college, it's a new chapter, it's a new time of your life, and a lot of the familiar surroundings will still be there. They'll still be there, but you're off to a new environment, a new chapter in your life. But enjoy, taking the time to be a senior. And second, and lastly, I would say that, your parent or parents or those who are helping you kind of shepherd you through this process are there to be resources in some extent. To some extent, I understand that there are cases where what mom and dad want versus what student wants is totally different, totally out at the opposite ends of the spectrum. But I feel like this is a time for a 17 or 18-year-old student to say, okay, I need to sit down and talk and have those meaningful conversations. Could be a dinner table conversation. It could be a conversation in the car on the way to a college campus, but like, this is what I'm really looking for. And you might go on some college campuses and drive away and say, nope, I'm glad we did it, but nope, it's not going to happen. And other campuses where you say, I didn't think much of it going in. I love it. I love it. And that, I feel like that feedback needs to be given to parents or parents to students. So that's important too.
Well, thank you again, Bruce. Those are phenomenal pieces of advice. I'm so happy that I had you here. Lehigh is obviously so lucky to have you for all of these years, as were we on the podcast. Bruce, I'm looking to have you again in a year or two. So, I'm not going to forget your number or email address. Okay. Thank you so much, Bruce.
My pleasure always, John. Yes, thank you so much.
The pleasure was all ours. And to everyone out there, good luck with the college search. Take care all and best wishes.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of The CAP, the College Admissions Process Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please don't forget to tell a friend and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am your host, John Durante, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The CAP. Thank you for listening to the College Admissions Process Podcast presented by Prep Expert. Prep Expert offers live online SAT and ACT courses with the best score guarantees, instructors, and curriculum. Go to prepexpert.com to guarantee your child's success.